that we have a minute of silence for the people who got slaughtered by Russian scumbag terrorists. And we honor the lives lost because we are defending ourselves. Children got killed in maternity units, civilians got killed. We have one Christian pastor, his mom got bombed to death in Mariupol in 2022. This is what Russians do, because they are terrorists. And this is what normal people do. They fight for their living like Ukrainians do. And this is why we will honor the lives lost during this ruthless war with a minute of silence. Thank you so much. Слава Україні! Так. Україна! Україна! І нашим героям тричі! All that every Ukrainian wants is for Russians to stop trying to kill them like they did with my great-grandparents and like they will do again until they are stopped. On my mother's side, my family, they took everything. The communists took everything, all the cattle, even their house. They took everything from us. On my father's side, my great-granddad, the communists shot him just because he was an Orthodox priest. And that decade, the Christianity for communists was a bad idea. So everyone who believed in God got killed. Earlier this year, by a firing squad, Russian scumbag terrorists, they killed a Ukrainian priest just because he was preaching in Ukrainian language. This is what terrorist scumbags do. They hate and they look down on every single nation of their neighbors. They've been ridiculing their neighbors for generations.
Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
And this is why we gather here. And this is why last night, for 12 hours, we were trying to raise funds for our army, for my cousin, for someone's brother, for someone's father. We have one family, one girl who comes here with her mom. Both her father and her brother are on the front line. No one, no Ukrainian knows for a certain that they will ever see their cousin, their brother, their father, their son-in-law ever again. One of our volunteers who comes to these rallies as well, his son-in-law was on the front line, but when his daughter gave birth to grandkids, he was demobilized from the front line. So for some Ukrainians, it's just a pause. But all we want is peace and freedom for Ukrainians. All we want, if NATO wants us, we will be part of NATO. If European Union wants us, we will be part of European Union. It's not acceptable for Russia, so they say. We don't care what is acceptable for Russia. They said it was unacceptable for them for any expansions of NATO border. Since they invaded, full-blown invasion in 2022 until today, the NATO border with Russia had doubled. What did Russia do? Absolutely nothing. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 And this is why we gather here. And this is why it's so important for us. Because it's personal. All we want is to have the same peace as we did before 2014. And the same people who say, just give Russians what they want. There is a very simple rhetoric to that. Russians want everything, absolutely everything. They want Ukraine, they want Moldova. If Latvia, Estonia and Lithuania wasn't part of NATO, they would take them in a heartbeat. Another military operation. They don't even call it war. Yet they are killing our civilians every single day. They are committing war crimes every single day. Because Russia is a terrorist state. Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Help Ukraine, protect peace.
Help Ukraine, protect peace.
Help Ukraine, protect peace.
Help Ukraine, protect peace.
And this is why we gather here. We can't even count how many rallies we had, but it's over 300 since 2014. We are gathering here, over there by the Whitehall, next to 10 Downing Street. Today we are here, but usually on Wednesdays at 6 p.m., on Fridays at 6 p.m. for 2 hours, and every Sunday at 3 p.m. for 2 hours, we gather just opposite 10 Downing Street at Whitehall, and we will do so until this war will cease. We will do so until Russians stop killing us. We will do so until they will stop destroying our homes. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 And also all their Russian house projects all around the world, they need to cease to exist. They exist to expand their culture and their language. They are there as a network for spies and just to get more intel and more spying on every single nation. They are saying that culture is outside politics, but they always put their rhetoric in their culture. The film that is now in Cannes Film Festival for Russia is a war film about Russians, one of the Russian generals wanting to conquer the Eastern Europe and much of the Europe. They say it's outside politics, yet they soak their culture in politics. They soak their songs and their culture in military propaganda. And then they say, don't touch the culture because it's outside politics. This is what terrorists do. Because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 And as I want to read you something that This week, one very unfamous actor by the name of Steven Seagal, he received a medal from a wanted war criminal from last year, for more than a year now, since 17th of March last year, and this is what he said to the whole world. Alleged rape attacker and alleged rapist in America, he flee to Russia, and this is what he says. This is their rhetoric that they are pushing. This war that we are currently embroiled in was started and financed by the West and has come to involve the entire world in a fight against good and evil. All religions, all nations, and all people should unite instead of being controlled and fooled by monster of fake press. We need to educate and illuminate all those who cannot see what is really happening right now. Well, let's talk about one word in that statement: illuminate. Guess who is using phosphorus bombs on the front line against both the army and civilians? They are literally illuminating and burning people alive. They are saying that the West is controlling all the narrative. Well, when they attack us in the middle of the night, when they have celebration in 2014 that Crimea, the jewel of Russia, is reunited, where is the West there? When they open all the prisons for Wagner in last decade, and those war criminals and criminals are killing civilians in different countries in Africa, like Mali, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, and Niger. How does West control that narrative? They are mercenaries that are fighting for natural resources in Africa. Guess what? In the Donbass and Lugansk region, there are lots of natural resources. That's why they are there. In Chechnya there was oil, and also another pattern emerging. Moldova, 1992, they annexed 20% of Moldova. 2008, they annexed 20% of Georgia. 2014 until today, Russia is standing on 20% of Ukraine. This is not a Western propaganda. When my cousin sends me picture from the front line, this is real, because Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
No trade with Russia.
More sanctions on 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 Russia.
For every Ukrainian